You people don't belong here. First class is for real passengers. That's what flight attendant Nicole Hayes said when she tore up the woman's boarding pass like it was trash, flicking it to the floor without blinking. She didn't know. None of them knew. That in less than 10 minutes. The woman they humiliated would have them all off that plane, replaced before it even left the ground. She had no clue she was talking to the CEO of Horizon Airlines, a woman who owns 30% of the very company she was trying to kick off the plane. Before we jump into what went down on that shocking summer afternoon, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And if stories about justice and power turning the tables inspire you, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell, because you won't want to miss what happens next. Okay, let's step on to Flight 227, from Chicago to Honolulu, June 19th. The time, 1:07 p.m. The moment boarding began for a long-awaited vacation, one that started with excitement and ended in a moment no one on that flight would ever forget. Vanessa Carter walked through the jet bridge in quiet comfort. A navy blue sweater, soft jeans, natural curls tucked under a cap. No makeup, no glam, just a mom on vacation. Beside her was her 10-year-old son, Ethan, clutching his stuffed sea turtle, grinning from ear to ear. They were heading to Hawaii for the first time, a treat Vanessa had promised him after a tough school year. Their boarding passes were for seats 2A and 2B first class, booked weeks in advance, platinum status, everything confirmed. They were barely seated when Nicole, a blonde woman in her mid-30s with a fixed smile and eyes that scanned like scanners, walked up. "Excuse me," she said, not kindly. "You'll need to move. These seats were reassigned to our VIPs." Vanessa looked up, puzzled. "Sorry? These are our seats, 2A and 2B. Here's the boarding pass." Nicole didn't even glance. "There's been a change," she said sharply. "You'll need to head to economy." Behind her stood Brian Foster, another flight attendant, tall, arms folded, smirking like it was all some joke. "Don't make this hard," he said. "You don't look like first-class passengers." Vanessa stayed calm. "I booked these seats myself. Platinum member. My name's Vanessa Carter." That's when Captain Daniel Pierce appeared at the curtain. "Is there a problem here?" Nicole stepped back and pointed at Vanessa. "She and her child are refusing to move. They're claiming these seats." Vanessa reached into her bag and calmly pulled out her Illinois driver's license and Platinum Horizon card. "I'm not claiming anything. These are my verified seats." Daniel barely glanced before waving a hand. "That's not real. We've had scams before. Take them to economy or have them removed." Brian leaned in and added, "People like you always pull stuff like this." "Excuse me?" Vanessa asked, her tone sharper now, and that's when Linda Walsh, security officer, stepped in. "Ma'am," she said firmly, "you can move peacefully or be escorted off." Ethan's hand clutched tighter to his mom's arm. "Mom, why are they mad at us?" he asked softly. Vanessa kept her voice calm for her son's sake. "Because some people judge unfairly, baby, but we'll fix this, okay?" "Okay, Mom," he whispered, but it didn't stop. Nicole grabbed the boarding passes from Vanessa's hand and tore them clean in two, right in front of everyone. "This is over," she snapped. "Move!" Vanessa stared at her, stunned. "That was a legal document." Linda stepped forward. "We're not doing this all day. Last warning." From across the aisle, a voice rose. "This is outrageous." It was Emma Larson, a white woman in her late 30s, seated in 1C. "They had valid tickets." A man a row back, Michael Grant, mid-40s, calm but clearly irritated, added, "You can't treat people like this. You didn't even check her ID." Vanessa turned slightly and, without anyone noticing, slipped her phone into record mode and placed it face down on her tray table. Mia Lang, a young trainee flight attendant near the galley, hesitated, then whispered to Vanessa as she passed. "I saw your name on the manifest. Your seats are real. This isn't right," Vanessa whispered back. "Record everything. Do not post. Just save it." But the humiliation didn't end there. Nicole walked to the galley, laughing under her breath with Brian. "She thinks she's important in that cheap sweater," Brian said, loud enough for Mia to hear. "Probably borrowed the kid for sympathy." Mia clenched her fists. Vanessa called her assistant quietly. "Rachel, log this. Make sure the internal system flags it, and start a timeline." Rachel's voice came through, calm and quick. "Already logging. System is active." That's when Richard and Laura Bennett, an older white couple dressed in golf resort attire, boarded and walked straight to seats 2A and 2B like nothing had happened. Nicole greeted them with open arms. "Don't worry," she smiled. "We handled it." Emma stood up, furious now. "This is discrimination." Michael raised his voice too. "Check their IDs. Properly. You're targeting them and it's obvious." Vanessa finally stood, voice steady but low. "You're going to regret this. Daniel." Nicole rolled her eyes. "Go back to economy where you belong." Mia stepped closer. "She's right. Their names were on the original manifest." Daniel brushed her off. "Stay in your place. Mia." Mia turned and whispered to the nearby passengers. "They're lying. The log was changed. I heard them talk about it." Meanwhile, Nicole walked back to the digital tablet in the galley and quietly altered the seating log. "No record for Carter," she whispered to Brian. Mia caught it. She had proof. From her seat. Vanessa heard the murmurs, saw the looks from passengers who were slowly realizing this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was bias. Exposed. "You're ruining Horizon," she said quietly. "And I'm going to fix it." Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. Not even as Ethan leaned into her side, whispering, "Are we still going to Hawaii?" She smiled down at him. "Yes, baby. We're getting to Hawaii, and we're not leaving this cabin." The moment Vanessa refused to budge, Captain Daniel Pierce stepped forward again, his voice sharper this time. "You have 10 seconds to get up and take your kid to economy," he barked, "or security will drag you out." He didn't care about tone or decency anymore, just power. Nicole stood behind him, arms crossed, smirking with satisfaction like justice had been served. "This is policy," she added, smug. "We don't tolerate scammers pretending to be someone they're not." Brian leaned in, adding fuel. "Lady, people like you don't end up in first class unless it's a mistake or a favor." He made sure to say "people like you" loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear. And it worked. A hush fell over the cabin. Mia Lang flinched when she heard it again. It wasn't just unfair. It was familiar. In the galley earlier, Nicole and Brian had laughed over Vanessa's cheap outfit, calling it a try-hard look for a basic seat. They didn't think anyone heard. But Mia had. And it wasn't the first time she'd seen this kind of profiling happen on a flight. She had filed a complaint about a similar situation just months ago in Seattle. "You're crossing a line," Mia said now, stepping out into the aisle. "They had valid boarding passes. I saw them myself." Daniel didn't even look at her. "Stay out of this. You're a trainee." Linda, the security officer, stepped forward again, her stance threatening. "Ma'am, you and your son need to move or we will remove you physically." Passengers began murmuring louder now. A few stood in the aisle. Emma Larson, her arms shaking from rage, shouted, "This is wrong. They were seated before anyone else." Michael Grant added, "You're targeting them and trying to cover it up." Vanessa gently pushed Ethan behind her and looked Linda square in the eye. "Do what you feel you need to, but we're not moving. This is our seat. And I'm not letting my son be bullied out of what I paid for." Ethan tugged on her sleeve, voice low. Mom, are we still going to Hawaii? She looked down and smiled sadly. Yes, sweetie. I'll make sure of it. He nodded slowly. They're mean. She rubbed his back. Yes, they are. But we'll show them how to handle mean people the right way. What none of them knew was that Vanessa had been here before. Not on a plane, but in life. At 22, she'd applied for a job at an airline and was denied in the final round. She'd been told later, off the record, that someone on the hiring team said she didn't have the right look for customer-facing roles. It stung, deeply, but it became fuel. She put herself through night school, earned her MBA, and spent 18 years building her own aviation services company from the ground up until she was able to buy 30% of Horizon Airlines, now making her the second largest shareholder and quietly appointed CEO just 6 months earlier. She didn't lead with titles. She believed in quiet leadership, in watching how people treated others when they didn't know who was watching. And today, they were about to find out who they had tried to kick off that plane. Still seated. Vanessa pulled out her phone again. Rachel, she whispered. Start logging every minute. Record is active. Her assistant's voice replied calmly through the earpiece. Internal system is tracking. Send me the clip. Mia, standing beside her, had already hit record herself. I got it too, she whispered. I caught him saying she was trouble and Nicole calling the ID fake. It's all there. Around them, passengers were whispering, watching, pulling out their phones, not to film, as the crew had already prohibited video, but to message loved ones or simply be ready. I've seen this before, Emma said out loud, voice rising. This isn't new, this isn't right, and I'm not letting it slide, Michael added. Horizon needs to clean house. This is an embarrassment. Vanessa stood now, her voice low but firm. You are out of line. Captain Pierce, all of you. I want to speak with a supervisor now. Daniel smirked, clearly trying to stay in control. The only supervisor here is me, Nicole added. And we say, economy or off? You're going to regret this, Vanessa replied evenly. Mia turned to Nicole. They are legitimate. You're faking the log. Nicole rolled her eyes. Trainees should be seen, not heard, Emma shouted again. Apologize to them. Michael's voice was colder now, directed at Daniel. This is a disgrace. You're making it worse with every word. Then came a new twist. Mia looked straight at the crowd. This isn't the first time, she said loudly. Captain Pierce and Nicole ignored 3 profiling complaints filed this year, 1 in Seattle, 1 in Dallas, 1 right here in Chicago, all against them. The whole cabin gasped. Vanessa looked at her. You're sure? Mia nodded. I was told to ignore it, but not this time. Passengers began calling out. Let her stay! Give her seat back! You're not above the rules! Someone knocked on the lavatory to call out the off-duty pilot, who emerged and raised his eyebrows. What the hell is going on here? Emma turned to him. She bought first class. They kicked her out. No cause, Michael added. And they just gave her seat to a white couple with no boarding passes. Daniel tried to regain control. She disrupted the boarding process. We have the right to remove anyone who poses a risk. Vanessa's voice cut through the noise. I'm not a risk. I'm your boss. You just don't know it yet. And still, Linda stood firm. Ma'am, she said again, reaching toward Vanessa's arm. But several passengers stepped in closer, arms crossed, forming a small human barrier. She's not going anywhere, Emma said. You're not dragging her out like this. Michael stepped in front of Ethan. He's 10 years old. You touch that kid and it's a whole new level. Mia said it again. I have the recording. Daniel paled for a second, then recovered. Recordings aren't legal if unauthorized. This is a one-party consent state, Mia shot back, and it's going straight to the internal board. Vanessa turned to Mia. Send it to Rachel, Right now. Rachel's voice crackled in. Got it. Transcribing now. System logs are matching names and timestamps. You're covered. Nicole stood there, clearly losing control, but still too proud to step down. She muttered under her breath. This always happens when we let people like her think they're important. Vanessa heard that one, loud and clear. And this time, so did everyone else. The cabin fell into a tense silence for a split second, just enough time for Captain Daniel Pierce to seize what he thought was control. He stepped up to the front of the first-class aisle, reached for the intercom, and clicked it on with a sharp snap. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice steady but condescending. We're experiencing a minor delay due to a disruptive passenger who refuses to comply with seating instructions. This matter will be handled shortly so we can proceed to Honolulu. That one announcement, that public shaming, was a line Vanessa Carter would never forget. A lie told through the loudspeaker to paint her, the second largest shareholder of Horizon Airlines and its newly appointed CEO, as a nuisance to be dealt with. She didn't flinch, but her son did. Ethan squeezed her hand and whispered, Mom, why are they yelling at us like we did something wrong? She crouched to his level and looked him in the eyes. We didn't do anything wrong. We're staying right here. You hear me? He nodded, but his eyes brimmed with confusion and fear. Nicole Hayes stood to the side, arms crossed, wearing the smug grin of someone who thought they'd already won. Brian Foster leaned against the galley wall and muttered, Can we just get this over with? We have real guests to serve. Mia Lang, barely 22 and still wearing her trainee badge, was practically shaking with anger, not fear. She had heard Nicole and Brian in the galley just minutes earlier. She's bluffing. Nicole had laughed, acting like she's important. Bet she got that platinum card from a raffle or something. Brian had chuckled. I don't care if she walked in with a tiara. She's not first class. Now, back in the cabin, Mia stepped forward again. That announcement was false, she said loudly. The Carters were seated before anyone else. Their tickets were legitimate. I saw them myself before Nicole changed the manifest. The passengers stirred again, louder this time. Emma Larson stood up, arms crossed. We're not stupid, she said. We've been watching this whole time. This is not about tickets. This is about appearances, Michael Grant added. He called her disruptive, but I've seen nothing but calm from her. This is a setup. Daniel didn't like the shift in the room. You're not in charge here, he barked at Emma and Michael. Sit down and let the crew handle the situation. You mean the situation you created? Emma shot back. That woman is clearly being targeted. Linda Walsh, still standing stiffly nearby, looked uneasy. Captain, maybe we should wait for corporate before escalating, she said carefully. Daniel ignored her. No, we remove her now. Linda hesitated. With her kid on board? Daniel nodded coldly. Yes, Mia's voice cut through again, shaking but firm. I've got a recording of you saying she's trouble. I've got Nicole mocking her outfit. I've got Brian saying she doesn't look the part. A few people gasped. Play it, someone said. So Mia did. She clicked play. The audio blared from her phone, Daniel saying, She's trouble, just get her out of here. Then Nicole laughing. She's probably pretending fake ID and a thrift store outfit. Brian. We both know she's not VIP material. Economy's that way. The sound spread through the cabin like fire. Emma covered her mouth. Oh my God. Michael turned toward Daniel, furious now. You announced to the plane she was disruptive? Then this comes out? That's slander. Another passenger further back added. This is racism. Flat out. Linda shifted again. Captain, I don't feel comfortable following through on this removal order without a supervisor present. Daniel turned to her, face red. I gave you a directive, and I'm saying it's not safe. Linda pushed back. Vanessa stepped forward now, voice calm but resonant. This is the moment where you choose your conscience over your chain of command. Linda. She looked her straight in the eyes. Because what happens next will define how you're remembered. Brian tried to deflect. Passengers can't interfere with crew operations. You're inciting unrest. Unrest? Michael fired back. We're trying to stop injustice. Nicole looked pale now. She's bluffing about being important. She's no one. And then, from behind the barrier of standing passengers, came a voice that made everyone pause. Ethan. Quiet, but loud enough to be heard. My mom's not nobody. She built this airline. The silence hit like a wall. Nicole scoffed. Built it? Please. Emma turned to Mia. Is that true? Mia nodded. She's Vanessa Carter. Check the executive board. CEO. 30% shareholder. Michael blinked. Wait, you're the new CEO? Vanessa nodded. Appointed in December. I didn't come here today as CEO. I came as a mom. But now that you've forced my hand, she pulled out her phone, tapped into the secure app, and called her assistant. Rachel, send the recordings to Sophia. Tell her we need new crew ready at gate 18. Already done, Rachel replied. Sophia's 2 minutes away. Daniel looked like the floor had just disappeared under him. Wait, your boss, Vanessa said quietly. And the only reason you're not being escorted off yet is because I believe in documentation first. But don't mistake my silence for weakness. Emma clapped. Michael followed. Passengers murmured, then applauded. Mia wiped her eyes. I knew it. I knew you were more than they thought. Nicole looked like she might be sick. Brian stepped back. I didn't know. I thought she was... What? Another black woman in the wrong seat? Vanessa said. You judged by what you saw, and not once did you ask who I was, because you already decided I didn't belong. Linda looked straight ahead. Frozen. I'm sorry, she whispered. Vanessa didn't respond. Not yet. She turned to the rest of the cabin. I know some of you might feel caught in the middle, but this is no longer about one seat. It's about a culture we've all let slide. That stops today. Then she turned to Daniel. You abused your authority, publicly humiliated a customer, lied to your passengers, and you did it all without ever asking my name, Mia whispered. This is what accountability looks like, Emma said, and this is what justice feels like. Vanessa gave one last look to Nicole, who had gone silent now. Hope the Bennetts enjoyed their stolen seats, she said coldly, because they'll be moving soon. The plane, though still grounded, was buzzing with the kind of energy that happens when something unjust finally starts to crack open, and truth begins to flood in. Captain Daniel Pierce stood frozen for a second, as if the weight of Vanessa's words hadn't fully landed yet. But they had. His face tightened, eyes scanning the cabin like a cornered animal, trying to gauge just how much power he had left. Nicole Hayes clutched the back of a first-class seat, knuckles white, mouth slightly open but saying nothing. Brian Foster stepped back toward the galley like he wanted to disappear into it. And then there was Linda Walsh, security officer. Her stance was still firm, but the shift in her eyes said everything. The badge didn't feel so solid anymore. Linda, Daniel barked, his voice cracking just slightly. Escort them off, now. But Linda hesitated. That moment, that one beat of silence, was all it took for the mood in the cabin to flip. Don't you touch them, Emma Larson snapped, now standing directly between Linda and Vanessa. She's the CEO. That's her seat. Michael Grant joined her, standing shoulder to shoulder. You lay a hand on that kid, and this turns into national news. Linda flinched. I'm just doing my job. Then do the right job, Vanessa said, calm but sharp. The one where you listen to the facts instead of following broken orders. Ethan's voice suddenly cut through again. Mom, they're still trying to take our seats? Vanessa knelt again. They can't anymore. Ethan, you just stay close to me. Okay? Okay. He nodded bravely, even though his small hands were still shaking. Linda stepped forward, slowly, cautiously, and reached toward Vanessa's arm. But before she could make contact, half a dozen passengers rose up. Literally. They stood between Linda and Vanessa like a wall. Don't, said a young woman in 1D. We saw everything. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen, added a man near the bulkhead. Mia Lang took one step forward. She's not going anywhere. Officer Walsh, you touch her. You touch us. Daniel tried again. Mia, you're out of line. No, sir, Mia said. You are. Inside the jet bridge. The door to the gate opened, and in walked Sophia Nguyen, Horizon Airlines managing director. Sharp black suit, hair pinned up, tablet in hand, all business, all calm, and very clearly in control. She paused just inside the cabin entrance, took in the scene, the standoff, the passengers standing protectively around Vanessa and Ethan, the crew frozen mid-chaos. I'm looking for Vanessa Carter, she said. Vanessa stood slowly. Right here. Sophia nodded once. Replacement crew is ready at the gate. Security has been briefed. Do you want them off the aircraft? The room inhaled. Everyone waited. Nicole looked like her entire body deflated. Brian took another step back. Daniel's mouth opened. This isn't standard protocol. I'm the captain. Not anymore, Sophia cut in, voice flat. I've reviewed the recordings. The logs were falsified. The audio files were authenticated. Your authority is revoked pending formal review. She turned to Vanessa. Orders? Vanessa looked over at her son, then the passengers, then Mia. Her voice was firm but measured. Remove Daniel, Nicole, and Brian. Escort them off the plane and flag them for internal misconduct review. Effective immediately. Understood, Sophia said. She tapped her headset. Security. Proceed. Linda froze again. Wait, what about me? Vanessa turned. You stood by too long, but I saw you hesitate. I saw you listen. That gives me one reason to offer you a second chance. You'll go through retraining, and if you pass, you'll stay. Linda's eyes softened. Thank you. Then she stepped aside. Out of the aisle. The door to the jet bridge opened again, and 3 new crew members stepped on. Captain Lisa Chen, First Officer Greg Patel, and Senior Flight Attendant Sarah Kim. Each nodded to Vanessa in quiet respect. Passengers clapped. Emma cheered softly, Michael said. This is what leadership looks like. Mia stood frozen, unsure what to do. Vanessa stepped toward her. You recorded all of it? Yes, ma'am. Mia said. You didn't back down. I couldn't. You stood up when no one else would. Vanessa turned to Sophia. Effective immediately. Promote Mia Lang to full flight attendant status. Sophia smiled. With pleasure. Mia looked like she might cry. Thank you. Nicole tried one last time. I didn't mean to. I was just doing what I thought was protocol. You tore up a child's boarding pass, Vanessa replied, her voice steady. You mocked a paying customer, you altered official records, and you laughed about it. Nicole slumped. I didn't know who you were. Vanessa's jaw clenched. That's exactly the problem. Security arrived, escorted Daniel, Nicole, and Brian off the plane, silent, heads down, humiliated. Richard and Laura Bennett, still seated in 2A and 2B, looked horrified as the attention turned to them. Vanessa walked over slowly. These were our seats. You sat down knowing that. Laura opened her mouth, but Vanessa held up a hand. We're not going to fight, but you're going to move. Richard nodded quickly. Of course. We didn't. We thought. It's okay, Vanessa said flatly. Just get up. They moved. She and Ethan sat down. Finally, in their rightful seats. Mia offered Ethan a juice box and smiled. You good, little man? Yeah, he said. Can we still go to Hawaii? Oh, you're definitely going to Hawaii, Vanessa said, pulling her son close. And we're going with a better crew. Sophia leaned down. We'll do a full investigation, and all affected passengers will be compensated. Would you like to delay takeoff or continue? Vanessa looked around. Emma gave her a thumbs up. Michael nodded. Let's go to Hawaii, Vanessa said. The cabin erupted in quiet applause. It wasn't wild, just grateful. Tension released. Justice felt. Vanessa leaned back, took Ethan's hand, and whispered, We're not just flying somewhere, we're changing something. And everyone in that cabin knew. She meant it. Vanessa Carter stood tall in the aisle of the Horizon Airlines first-class cabin, eyes steady, voice calm, but radiating power that filled every square inch of that aircraft. The passengers had just witnessed the impossible, a woman they had seen humiliated, disrespected, and accused of fraud now fully reclaiming her space, not just in the seat she paid for, but in the very company that wronged her. My name is Vanessa Carter, she said clearly, speaking to the entire cabin. I am the CEO and 30% shareholder of Horizon Airlines. And what just happened here? It ends today. The gasp that followed rippled like wind through trees, quiet at first, then full-on disbelief. Emma Larson. Hands still clutched over her chest, blinked hard. Did she just say CEO? Michael Grant sat forward in his seat and let out a slow whistle. That explains everything. No wonder she stood her ground, even the Bennett couple. Now seated quietly in row 4, looked stunned, their earlier smugness replaced by visible embarrassment. At the front of the cabin, Sophia Nguyen stood to the side, tablet in hand, confirming security clearance with the gate. We have the replacement crew on standby, she said firmly. Shall I bring them in? Vanessa gave a single nod. Bring them aboard. The cabin door opened again, and in stepped Captain Lisa Chen, First Officer Greg Patel, and Lead Flight Attendant Sarah Kim, all in crisp uniforms, professional, collected, and aware of the weight of the moment. Sarah approached Vanessa first and extended her hand. Ms. Carter, we're honored to serve this flight. Vanessa shook her hand warmly. Let's show them what first class truly looks like. Behind them, Linda Walsh, now quietly seated near the galley, nodded in respect, still processing the second chance she'd been given, still shaken but grateful. Mia Lang stood by the wall, badge still reading trainee, eyes wide with disbelief at what she was witnessing. Vanessa turned to her. You held the line when it mattered. You recorded the truth. And you stood up when everyone else stayed quiet. Mia swallowed hard. I couldn't let it happen again. And you won't have to, Vanessa said. As of this moment, you are promoted to full flight attendant, with commendation for moral integrity and leadership. Mia looked like she was about to cry. Emma clapped softly, followed by several others in the cabin. Applause building naturally, not wild, but real, earned. Vanessa then turned toward the front of the plane, her tone sharpening. Nicole Hayes, Brian Foster, Daniel Pierce. The names hung heavy in the air. You are hereby terminated from Horizon Airlines, effective immediately, for misconduct, discrimination, falsifying flight records, and endangering the emotional safety of a minor. Sophia tapped the commands into her tablet. Confirmed. Internal systems updated. HR and legal flagged. Nicole, still standing in the galley like a statue, finally broke her silence. You don't understand. We were just following standard operating procedure. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Standard operating procedure doesn't include tearing up boarding passes, laughing about passengers' clothing, and mocking their identity. Brian stepped forward slightly. We didn't know who you were. Exactly, Vanessa snapped. Because you didn't bother to ask. You saw a black woman in jeans and a sweater and decided she didn't belong. You made a judgment. You acted on it. And now you're facing the consequences. Nicole tried to deflect. Daniel gave the orders. I was just... Stop, Vanessa said. Take responsibility for your own actions. You mocked me to your colleague. You tore up my boarding pass. You altered the seat manifest. None of that was protocol. That was personal. Nicole looked down. And then, surprisingly, she spoke again, but not to defend herself. There's more, she said quietly. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Speak. Nicole hesitated, then looked around the cabin. Daniel, he's done this before, more than once. He's profiled passengers before. We all knew. Me, Brian, even some gate agents. It was subtle sometimes not. He targeted people based on race, clothes, how they spoke, and every time someone complained, he had a way of burying it, manipulating records, saying they were disruptive, writing fake incident summaries. That's why I changed the log. I'd seen him do it. I thought that's how it worked. The cabin fell silent. Mia's eyes filled with tears. You let it keep happening? Nicole nodded slowly. I did. I was wrong. I know it doesn't fix anything now, but I needed to say it. Vanessa stared at her for a long second. Then she turned to Sophia. Add this to the internal report. Open an inquiry into Captain Pierce's prior flights. I want every incident reviewed, passenger complaints, crew statements, everything. Sophia nodded. Already flagged. Legal team will coordinate with ethics board. From her seat, Emma spoke up. Thank you for not just fighting for yourself, but for every person who's been silenced before, Michael added. This changes everything. Vanessa's eyes softened, just for a moment. We'll make sure of it. She stepped back toward her seat. 2A, where Ethan was curled up with his headphones on, finally relaxing. Hey, kiddo, she whispered. We're set. Everything's back on track. He looked up, smiled. Are we still going to Hawaii? Absolutely, she said, brushing his hair back. And we're doing it the right way. Sarah Kim approached with a warm smile. We'll be ready for takeoff shortly. Would you like a water or juice for Ethan? He likes apple juice, Vanessa said. Already on it, Sarah replied, turning to Mia. Let's prep the cabin. Mia grinned and walked confidently down the aisle, no longer a trainee, but a full team member now. Nicole, Brian, and Daniel were nowhere to be seen, escorted off without ceremony, replaced by accountability and truth. The plane had shifted, not just in crew, but in culture, and everyone on board felt it. Vanessa turned once more toward the passengers. What happened today wasn't just about one flight. It was about years of unchecked assumptions, of silence, of small moments that build into big problems. But today, we changed that. All of us. Together. And for the first time since boarding began, the entire cabin smiled. Not because they were headed to paradise, but because something far bigger had just taken flight. With the chaos finally behind them and the plane minutes away from pushback. Vanessa Carter stood just outside the cockpit door, her voice steady and composed, but carrying the unmistakable finality of leadership. Effective immediately, she said, her eyes moving from face to face. Nicole Hayes, Brian Foster, and Captain Daniel Pierce are terminated from Horizon Airlines. Their actions today, supported by multiple recordings, passenger testimony, and internal misconduct history, have violated our code of conduct, our ethical commitments, and basic human decency. Around her. The cabin fell silent once more, not from tension this time, but reverence. Passengers listened, not like they were watching a drama unfold, but as if witnessing a quiet revolution. Their employment is concluded, their credentials are deactivated, they will not set foot on another Horizon aircraft again. Sophia Nguyen, standing beside her, nodded and confirmed. Systems updated, their badges are voided, legal and HR have received full logs and flight data. Vanessa turned then to Linda Walsh, who stood near the galley, eyes lowered, hands folded in front of her, still wearing the uniform that moments ago aligned her with the wrong side of history. "Linda," Vanessa said, more gently, "you had a choice. You followed an order that you knew didn't feel right. But I saw hesitation. I saw you listen when it mattered most. That means something to me. So here's what I'm offering. A second chance. Mandatory retraining, followed by an ethics and de-escalation certification. You pass, you stay, you fail, you're out." Linda looked up, stunned. "You'd give me that?" "People grow when they're challenged." Vanessa replied, "And this is your moment to grow." Linda nodded, tears beginning to build. "Thank you. I won't waste it." Mia Lang stood nearby, still in awe of how the world had flipped in just 20 minutes. She barely recognized herself. This wasn't the quiet, wide-eyed trainee who'd hesitated to speak up 2 months ago in Seattle when she saw a similar injustice unfold. That time, she stayed silent. This time, she had not. Vanessa looked her way and smiled. "You're officially promoted. But more than that, you're my reminder that integrity still exists at every level." "I just wanted to do the right thing," Mia said softly. "You did," Vanessa replied. "And now you're going to help lead the next generation of what that looks like." As passengers settled back into their seats, Sarah Kim and Greg Patel, now operating as lead crew, moved through the cabin, checking final boarding logistics. Ethan, now in seat 2B beside his mother, finally exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. "Mom," he said, voice still small. "You really fired them?" Vanessa chuckled gently. "Yes, sweetie, I did." "Even the captain?" "Especially the captain." Ethan beamed. "You're awesome." But just as the flight seemed ready to leave the ground, Brian Foster's voice came back one last time, not in person, but via a formal confession given during his off-boarding process. Sophia approached Vanessa's seat, crouched beside her, and whispered, "We just got the written statement. It's bad." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Brian admitted that he, Nicole, and Daniel have been systematically covering up bias complaints for at least 2 years. Sophia said, "Every time someone reported discrimination, they'd either flag the passenger as disruptive, alter the seating logs, or bury the incident under security protocol tags. The log changes you saw today, they weren't a one-off. They were routine." Vanessa's face didn't change. She'd suspected as much. The patterns weren't new, but hearing it confirmed still hit like a punch to the gut. "How many incidents?" "At least 11, that we know of." Vanessa sat up straighter, looked out over the cabin, the very place where so many of those wrongs had likely happened without anyone standing up, without anyone believing the passenger brave enough to speak. "Then we audit every flight Daniel ever captained, every log Nicole and Brian ever touched, from gate to landing, if this is cultural. We're going to root it out at the source." Sophia nodded. "Already assembling the audit team. Make sure Mia is part of it," Vanessa added. She understands what to look for. The flight wasn't just taking off with a new crew, it was leaving the gate with a new mission. In less than half an hour, Vanessa had turned a moment of humiliation into a movement, not with a press conference, not with a viral video, but with truth, accountability, and the kind of leadership that doesn't ask for applause, only results. And as the aircraft began to taxi, every passenger knew they'd just witnessed more than justice. They'd seen reform born in real time, at 36,000 feet and rising. The wheels lifted from the runway with a soft hum, and Horizon Airlines Flight 227 rose into the clouds, finally en route to Honolulu. The mood inside the cabin was different now, not just relaxed, but changed. Where there had been tension, now there was quiet admiration. Where there had been injustice, now there was course correction. In seats 2A and 2B, Vanessa Carter and her son Ethan sat side by side, sipping apple juice and gazing out at the cottony sky. For the first time since boarding began, Ethan smiled without hesitation. "We're really going to Hawaii, huh?" he whispered. Vanessa smiled back, her hand resting over his. "We are, baby. And we're doing it our way." She leaned back into the seat, head against the headrest, but her mind was anything but at rest. Everything that happened in the last hour replayed in her thoughts. Nicole's sneer, Daniel's announcement over the intercom, the sound of her boarding passes being torn like they were trash. She had endured all of it with the patience of a mother, the poise of a leader, and the will of a woman who had built everything she had from nothing. But the story didn't end with her reclaiming her seat. That was just the beginning. In the space between Chicago and Honolulu, Vanessa began shaping a new reality, one where passengers would never again be dismissed for how they looked or where they came from. A reality where crew training would focus not only on safety, but also on human dignity. Next to her, Mia Lang moved through the cabin with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. She had stepped into the fire and come out stronger, promoted, respected, and now invited by Vanessa herself to lead an internal training initiative for bias prevention across the aisle. Sarah Kim smiled as she took orders with care, setting a tone that would define the future of Horizon's in-flight culture. Even Linda Walsh, seated quietly in the rear jump seat, now carried the weight of a second chance. She wasn't celebrating, not yet, but she was listening, learning, and preparing for the road back with humility. Vanessa believed in second chances, but not in third ones, and everyone knew that. Emma Larson looked over her shoulder mid-flight and gave Vanessa a soft nod. "You changed something today," she said. "Not just here, everywhere," Michael Grant added from a few rows behind. "I'd fly your airline again in a heartbeat." Vanessa offered a warm but quiet smile. "I didn't set out to change anything today," she replied. "I just wanted to take my son on vacation." She looked down at Ethan, now asleep under a blanket, mouth slightly open, clutching his stuffed sea turtle. "But I guess some things change whether you want them to or not." As the hours passed and the plane cruised high above the Pacific, Vanessa opened her tablet and reviewed the preliminary reform plan Sophia had drafted from her notes. Mandatory diversity and bias training for all flight staff, independent audits of past passenger complaints, a new internal reporting system that went directly to the CEO's office, and perhaps most importantly, a program for passengers to submit anonymous feedback that couldn't be deleted, altered, or ignored. "We're not going to sweep anything under the rug anymore," Vanessa whispered to herself. "Not on my watch." In the final hour of the flight, a quiet moment arrived. Ethan stirred, stretched, and looked up at her. "Mom," he mumbled. "Yeah, baby. I'm glad you're my mom," he said. "You're my hero." Vanessa's throat tightened. She pulled him close, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "I built all of this. Horizon, my business, my life, so you could fly in a world that's fair. He nodded, already drifting back to sleep. As the flight began its descent toward Honolulu, with golden clouds glowing outside the window, Sophia sent a final message to Vanessa's tablet. Statement from former employee confirms regional leadership looked the other way. Systemic failure. Recommending full regional audit. Vanessa read it, then calmly typed back, approved. No exceptions. By the time the plane touched down, the passengers erupted in soft applause, not just for a smooth landing, but for the journey they'd all taken together. A journey through injustice, resistance, truth, and change. As the wheels kissed the runway and the aircraft slowed to a glide, Vanessa looked out at the bright Hawaiian sky, a peaceful smile returning to her lips. That evening, at the resort, Vanessa and Ethan stood on the beach as the sun dipped into the ocean. He ran ahead into the waves, laughing, while she stood back, hands on her hips, finally breathing in calm. The world hadn't changed in one flight, but something inside it had shifted, and now, it would never be the same. If you believe in equity, in fairness, in people standing their ground when everything is against them, stand with Vanessa. Share her story. Speak up. Because real change doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs someone willing to say, "Not today. Not on my flight. Not on my watch. Not ever again."